Hey, Stoic warrior, pause for a moment and look around. We live in a world where almost everyone is caught in the endless trap of trying to prove something. People prove they are right. They prove they are worthy. They argue, they explain. They over-explain, and sometimes they even go so far as to beg. Beg to be seen. Beg to be accepted. Beg to be validated. But the Stoic doesn't fall into this pit. A Stoic doesn't beg for attention. A Stoic doesn't chase validation. A Stoic doesn't explain himself to the world. Why? Because the Stoic knows that silence is a form of strength, a discipline, a shield against the noise of vanity. Most people, however, when they are hurt, rejected, or misunderstood, react in the exact opposite way. They rush, they chase, they scramble to fix what's broken by explaining themselves to people who have already made up their minds not to understand. And that reaction, which many mistake as courage, is in truth weakness wearing a mask. Think about it. You call someone and they don't answer. Instead of leaving it there, you call again. You text again. You pour your heart into a long message, desperately hoping they'll finally see your worth. But here's the raw truth. The more you explain, the more you beg, the more power you hand away. And that is not Stoic. The great Stoics, Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus, Seneca, all understood this. They mastered the art of silence, not because they were indifferent, not because they didn't care, but because they had grasped a deeper law of life. The more we value things outside our control, the less control we truly have. Epictetus taught us this with clarity. And when you chase someone's attention, when you plead for their understanding, you are handing them your control. You are saying, without words, my peace depends on how you respond. But that is not peace. That is a prison. Real strength is different. Real strength is when someone disrespects you, and instead of explaining, defending, or retaliating, you quietly walk away. Not from arrogance, not from pride, but from dignity. Because dignity doesn't scream. Dignity doesn't chase. Dignity doesn't explain. It silently detaches. And this silence is not emptiness. It is discipline. It is self-respect. It is the inner strength that whispers, I don't need to be heard by you, because I already hear myself. This kind of silence terrifies people. Why? Because when you don't react, you take away the control they thought they had over you. Your stillness exposes their noise. Your restraint reveals their lack of it. And suddenly they are forced to wrestle not with you, but with themselves. So today, let's talk about silence. Not the silence of weakness, but the silence of power. The kind of silence that unsettles. The kind of silence that builds presence. The kind of silence that makes people wonder what changed. The silence that lets your absence echo louder than any words you could ever send. We're going to break down 6 deep truths, 6 reasons why silence is the Stoic superpower, and why those who practice it never chase, never beg, never explain. If you are tired of giving too much, if you've been misunderstood, if you've ever chased someone who turned away, this is your turning point. Let this be the reminder you didn't know you needed. Before we dive into the first truth, I ask just one thing. If this already resonates with you, like this video. Leave a comment with your affirmations as we go. Share this with someone who is stuck in the same cycle. And subscribe for more Stoic growth content. Above all, don't skip any part of this message, because sometimes a single idea, a single truth, has the power to completely change the way you carry yourself for the rest of your life. And here is your affirmation for today. Drop it in the comments and carry it with you. My silence is my power. 1. Silence makes them feel your absence more than your words. Silence doesn't just speak, it resounds. It doesn't push, it pulls. Have you noticed something strange? When you stop chasing, when you stop over-explaining, when you stop fighting to be heard, people suddenly notice your absence more than they ever valued your presence. Think back to the last time you felt hurt, rejected, or disrespected. Your first instinct was probably to defend yourself, to text back, to fight for your worth, to argue your side. But here's the paradox. The more you talk, the less they listen. The more you chase, the faster they run. The more you explain, the cheaper your words become. But when you go silent, truly silent, something powerful happens. Suddenly, they notice. Suddenly, they wonder. Suddenly, they feel the weight of your absence more than they ever appreciated. Your presence, Elbert Hubbard once said, "He who does not understand your silence will probably not understand your words." The Stoics understood this thousands of years ago. Silence unsettles in ways that noise never can. When someone expects you to beg, and instead you retreat into stillness, you hold up a mirror to their actions. Your silence says, "I saw how you treated me. I felt what you did, but I value myself too much to explain it to you." This silence isn't arrogance, it's clarity. Because the truth is, if they cared, they would ask. If they respected you, they would reach out. If they were emotionally mature, they would not need your long explanations to recognize your worth. And so, you stay silent. In that silence, you take back all the power you once scattered in explanations. You stop pouring energy into people who don't even understand themselves. You stop trying to heal through conversation because you realize that some wounds heal best in quiet. And yes, your silence will trigger them. It will confuse them. They will start asking themselves, why didn't he react? Why didn't she respond? Did they stop caring? And that is when the power shifts. Because silence speaks a truth. They cannot run from you. No longer owe them an explanation. 2. Silence allows you to hear the truth. Louder, the world is noisy. People are noisy. Even your own emotions are noisy. But silence, real silence, is what clears the fog. It is in silence that you don't just hear others. You finally hear yourself. When people are heartbroken, betrayed, or lost, what do they usually do? They run to noise. They seek advice from 10 different people. They scroll endlessly through social media, hoping for comfort. They chase temporary words, hoping they will heal permanent wounds. They even confront the very person who hurt them, begging for closure. But the Stoic does something radically different. He turns to silence, not because he feels nothing, but because he understands that the deepest answers never come from noise. They come from reflection. Marcus Aurelius said, "If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it, and this you have the power to revoke at any moment. And how do you revoke it? Through silence. When you allow the mind to become still, the truth begins to rise to the surface. You begin to hear truths like, "They never truly respected me. I just refused to accept it. I'm not angry because they left. I'm angry because I stayed too long. I don't need closure. I need peace." These realizations never come in a text message. They never come in begging for answers. They come in the quiet hours, when you stop chasing, stop explaining, and finally start listening to yourself. Silence is what separates emotions from values. When you're hurt, your emotions scream, chase them, prove your worth. Don't let them go, but in silence, your values whisper. Hold your dignity, protect your peace, let them go. And it is in that whisper, not in the noise, that the Stoic finds freedom. This is why the Stoics didn't react quickly. They didn't make decisions in anger, nor did they allow emotions to dictate their judgment. They embraced a sacred stillness, a pause before the storm. While modern society tells us, speak your mind, tell them how you feel, don't let anyone disrespect you, the Stoic path teaches the opposite, because respect is not earned through louder reactions. It is earned through grounded silence. Here's what most people fail to realize. The more silent you are, the more the truth around you begins to reveal itself. You don't have to interrogate people to see where they stand. You don't have to beg for answers. You don't even need to demand clarity. Their actions will show you. The truth comes out when you stop chasing and start observing. In silence, masks fall away, and most importantly, silence transforms how you live. Instead of reacting impulsively to life, you begin responding with purpose. Silence is not weakness. Silence is not passivity. Silence is focused, intentional, and powerful. It is the doorway to inner wisdom, a doorway most people never dare to walk through because they are too addicted to noise. So, when you are unsure, when you are overwhelmed, when your emotions cloud your sight, do not act. Be still. Do not rush to words. Do not rush to explanations. The answer is not out there. It is in you. And you will only hear it when you choose silence. 3. Begging. Foreclosure is a form of self-betrayal. Talk about something most people are afraid to admit. Begging foreclosure rarely leads to peace. More often than not, it only leads to deeper pain. We all crave it. That one last conversation, that final explanation, the ending that feels complete. We convince ourselves, if I could just have one honest talk, then I'd feel better. But here is the brutal truth. If someone truly cared, you would not have to beg for closure. They would give it to you freely, with respect. And if they don't, then your silence is the closure, Epictetus said. Don't explain your philosophy, embody it. At first, this might not seem connected to closure, but it is. Because when you stop chasing closure and instead embody your values, you stop needing other people to validate your pain. Yes, the pain is real, but needing them to explain why they hurt you, that is giving them power over your healing. Here is the cycle many people live in. They hurt you. You demand answers. They respond with avoidance, indifference, or coldness. You end up feeling worse, and the cycle repeats until you finally realize this. Closure is not something they give you. Closure is something you give yourself. It's easy to lie to yourself and think, if I just explain my side, if I just send one last message, if I just make them understand, then I'll heal. But here's what really happens. You end up pouring your heart out to someone who already made peace with hurting you. You end up explaining yourself to someone who already chose to leave. You waste energy hoping that the very person who broke your expectations will be the one to fix them. That is not closure. That is self-abandonment. The Stoics understood that. Emotions cloud judgment, especially when pride and ego are involved. You want to be the one who was understood. You want to be the one who made your case. You want them to finally admit, yes, you were good to me. Yes, I was wrong. But chasing that is a betrayal of your own growth. Real closure is this. You recognize that what they gave you was the most they were capable of giving. You accept that no explanation, no long conversation, no forced goodbye will suddenly make them more respectful, more loving, or more honest. You stop waiting for a conversation that will never come, and in that acceptance, your power returns. The people who hurt you don't need to understand your worth. You do. The people who left don't need to say goodbye. You can say it without words. The people who ghosted don't need a second chance. Your silence is their answer. So stop writing those unsent letters. Stop rehearsing the perfect message in your head. Stop chasing closure from people who were never truly open in the first place. Walk away, be silent. Let your silence be the space where your self-respect finally breathes again, for silence exposes. What words try to hide, there is a strange power in silence. Because when you go quiet, masks begin to fall off. Words can be beautiful. Words can soothe, inspire, and heal. But words can also deceive. People say what they think you want to hear. They apologize without meaning it. They explain, justify, and cover their actions with excuses. But silence cannot lie. Ralph Waldo Emerson put it best. What you do speaks so loudly that I cannot hear what you say. The Stoics lived by this truth. They didn't judge people by apologies. They judged them by patterns. And the best way to see someone's pattern is simple. Stop talking. Stop explaining. Stop filling the silence for them. And then watch. Because when you go silent, people reveal themselves. The one who truly respects you will notice your absence and reach out with honesty. The one who only used you will vanish because they never valued you to begin with. The manipulator will grow angry, not because you wronged them, but because they lost the control they had over your reactions. This is the paradox. Words create illusions, but silence reveals reality. You don't have to confront them. You don't have to argue. You don't even need to expose their lies. Just withdraw your words and observe. Watch who checks in when you're quiet. Watch who disappears when you stop giving. Watch who grows frustrated when you refuse to be provoked. That's the truth. And yes, it's often brutal, but it's necessary. Because silence sometimes cuts deeper than confrontation. People can dismiss your words, but they cannot dismiss your absence. They can argue with your opinions, but they cannot argue with your stillness. When you stay quiet, you stop feeding their illusions. You stop playing their games. You stop pretending their words carry more weight than their actions. And in that silence, clarity finally emerges. You begin to trust patterns over promises. You begin to believe energy over explanations. You begin to value what is real over what is spoken. That is Stoicism. It is not cold, it is clear. It is not distant, it is discerning. It is not emotionless, it is emotionally disciplined. So, the next time someone tries to talk their way back into your life, don't rush to respond. Don't get lost in their words. Observe. Go silent. Let the truth show itself without you saying a thing. 5. Silence is the highest form of confidence. Let's be honest. When someone misunderstands you, it hurts. When someone spreads lies about you, it burns. Your instinct is to defend yourself, to explain your side, to say, "That's not me. You've got it wrong." But the Stoic doesn't chase understanding from others. He seeks understanding within himself. Why? Because explaining yourself to people who have already made up their minds is not confidence. It is fear of being misjudged. And fear has no place in the soul of a Stoic. Marcus Aurelius warned us, "Don't waste what remains of your life in speculating about your neighbors, unless with a view to some mutual benefit." Think about that. Every time you try to convince someone of your worth, your goodness, or your loyalty, you are spending your limited time and energy on someone else's judgment. That is not power. That is insecurity. The person who does not explain himself is not arrogant. He is at peace. Why? Because he knows his intentions are clean. He knows his actions are aligned. He knows his value doesn't need to be translated into words for those who don't care to understand it. This level of detachment isn't easy. You will be called cold. You will be labeled selfish. You might even lose people who once seemed close to you. But remember this. Losing people who never truly saw you is not a loss, it is alignment. Here is a truth no one wants to admit. Most people don't want to understand you. They want to control how you are perceived. And when your silence breaks, their illusion, they grow angry. Not because you wronged them, but because you stopped playing their game. When you stop explaining, you start leading with energy. You stop justifying your distance. You stop defending why you walked away. You stop begging people to respect your boundaries. You simply act, and those who are meant to remain in your life will understand your silence without needing subtitles. This kind of presence is rare. It makes manipulators uncomfortable. It makes users lose interest. It makes the wrong people walk away. But the ones who remain, those who are genuine, they will respect you deeply. Why? Because they see that you will never lower your value to fit inside someone else's misunderstanding. That is Stoic silence. Not loud, not desperate, not theatrical, just calm, rooted, unshakable. You don't owe anyone an explanation for choosing peace. You don't need to convince anyone that your boundary is valid. You don't need to shout your value in rooms where your silence already spoke it for you. 6. Detachment in silence is what teaches them. The lesson there is something uniquely powerful about a person who chooses to walk away, not in rage, not in drama, but in quiet detachment. You don't slam the door. You don't send a final emotional message. You simply leave. And in that silence, you teach the lesson that words never could. Seneca reminded us, we suffer more often in imagination than in reality. And this is what happens when you go silent. The real suffering begins not in you, but in them. Because their mind starts replaying the silence. When you stop responding, they are left alone with their thoughts. They are left with their guilt. They are left with the memory of how you treated them, and with the echo of your absence. Your detachment speaks clearly. I no longer need to prove myself to you. I will not stay where I am not respected. I have realized that peace is more valuable than connection. Most people don't know how to handle this kind of energy. They are used to people who react. They are used to people who beg, who fight for closure, who break down just to be heard. But when you go silent, you refuse to play the emotional game. You exit with dignity. And that silence forces them to confront themselves. They expect you to chase. They expect you to fight, to stay. They expect you to keep coming back. But you don't. And that unsettles them more than any argument ever could. Because suddenly they realize they no longer have access to your energy. They no longer hold the upper hand. They never believed you'd really walk away. That's the moment the lesson begins. Because people rarely learn from words. They learn from distance. They don't change when you scream, "Respect me." They change, if they ever do, when your absence forces them to realize what they lost. And if they don't change, that's fine too. Because the lesson was never for them. It was for you. You learn that your peace doesn't need permission. You learn that not everyone deserves an explanation. You learn that sometimes silence isn't just strength, it is healing. When you detach in silence, you step away from toxic cycles. You stop bleeding in front of people who were never capable of understanding pain. You stop trying to explain storms to people who have never stepped outside in the rain. Detachment doesn't mean you don't care. It means you care too much about your own soul to keep it in spaces where it is neglected. That's why the Stoics weren't reactive. They didn't chase validation. They didn't run after justice. They let silence speak for them. You don't need to yell, "I'm done." You can simply be done. And that is real power. That is the kind of silence that terrifies those who once thought they had control over you. So don't be afraid to detach. Don't be afraid to go quiet. Let them sit in the emptiness where your voice once lived. Final closing: if you've made it this far, you already feel it, a shift inside you. A quiet realization, a truth you've always known but maybe forgotten. Along the way, you don't need to chase to be worthy. You don't need to beg to be loved. You don't need to explain to be respected. You don't need to break your own peace just to keep someone else comfortable. That is the foundation of Stoicism. It is not about coldness. It is about clarity. It is not about detachment from love. It is about detachment from chaos. The Stoics left us a timeless reminder. Silence is not weakness. Silence is control. It is the refusal to waste energy on what is beneath you. It is the confidence to know that your presence carries value, even when you are absent. There will always be moments when your emotions try to take over. Moments when you'll feel the urge to react, to explain, to fight, to prove. But in those moments, remember this: your silence might not win the argument, but it will win yourself back, because every time you choose not to react, you build peace. Every time you walk away quietly, you build worth. Every time you guard your dignity, you build a power that cannot be stolen. So, if there's one thing to carry from this entire journey, it's this: let your silence be your final word, not from ego, not from spite, but from deep, unshakable self-respect. And here's your final affirmation. Write it, repeat it, embody it. My silence is my last word, and my most powerful one.